Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. The past weekend of motorsport was a dark one, but the world of motorsport never stops, even in the face of tragedy. So let's look at everything that went on, such as IndyCar and Indy NXT from Mid-Ohio, Formula 2 and 3 from Austria, World and European Rallycross, as well as a brief look at the 24 Hours of Spa and the 2023 Le Mans Classic. I'll also cover the Formula Regional European races at Spa, but unlike so many channels, I'll not be showing the crash footage. There are thousands of channels who uploaded it within minutes of it happening, and some outright lie in their thumbnails. Munawar Javar, your mother would be ashamed of you. I'm even going to discuss NASCAR, because Shane van Gisbergen was there, and it was a Chicago street race. So, it's different. Make sure you subscribe and let's begin with IndyCar. I have been really impressed with the consistency of Marcus Ericsson, finishing no lower than 10th in the first 8 races. Very impressive. Until he hit fellow Swede Felix Rosenqvist on the first lap. Both drivers were out. The rest of the race was all about Alex Palou. Colton Herta is still looking for that win and had pole, but a mistake on pit entry that got him a penalty ruined his race. Alex Palou has been incredible, and in this race, he took Carl Kirkwood to school and then won yet again. Alex Palou is going to be difficult to stop in 2023. Graham Rahal looked to be on for an impressive result until a botched pit stop dropped him back. After that, the race settled down, and honestly, wasn't that interesting of a watch, which is unusual for IndyCar. But Alex Palou had a massive lead. There was some good racing in the midfield, especially around Pato O'Ward and Alexander Rossi, but Alex Palou took his third win in a row and has a 110-point lead over Scott Dixon, and is yet to finish outside the top 8. Simon Pagenaud was absent this weekend after a massive crash in qualifying, and happily he is fine. I'm sure he'll be back at the next race in Toronto in a couple of weeks. Indy NXT was also racing at Mid-Ohio. Christian Rasmussen had bounced back and was leading the race. Then the rain came. Lewis Foster pulled off an awesome move. I don't know how he got the car stopped, but it gave him the lead. Series leader Nolan Siegel made a mistake and spun on the grass. Jamie Chadwick was having her best race yet, but on this episode of the Jamie Chadwick Show, she got nudged wide by Ahmed and dropped back. Ahmed clearly slid into her in a very unsporting move. So this is the rivalry of Season 1 of the JCS. It'll probably be cancelled. Lewis Foster took the win, but Siegel still has a decent lead in the series with Rasmussen chasing him. The first Formula 2 race from Austria was all about tyres. It was damp, but some drivers set off on slicks. One of those was Jehan Deruvala, who spun on the first lap and brought out the safety car. Richard Verschoor was second when he crashed, bringing out another safety car and causing everyone to jump on the correct tyres. Clement Novalak was the star of this race. The Trident driver has had a poor year so far, but looked like a man possessed when he went round the outside of Hajar and made his way towards a very impressive podium. He was later disqualified. Kush Maney was a very naughty boy when taking out Enzo Fittipaldi. As good as the Campos drivers were at the start of the year, they shouldn't resort to these kind of tactics. Jack Crawford took his first Formula 2 win from Victor Martins, who is saving his season right now. Victor Martins started the second race on pole but had a bad start and dropped to third, behind his teammate and championship leader Frederik Vesti. It was not a very interesting race, and Vesti seemed to have both ART's numbers. There was a safety car when Leclerc lost a wheel. That meant a couple of drivers who pitted at the right time were suddenly challenging for the win. Ayumu Iwaza and Richard Verschoor were carving through the front runners on fresh tyres, but their progress was halted by another virtual safety car. 4 laps left and Verschoor just had 2 guys to take for the win, and he managed it, as well as holding off Iwaza, revenging the lost win from last year. Richard Verschoor won for the first time since the opening race of 2022, and Van Amersfoort's first win in Formula 2. Frederik Vesti was third and has a 20-point lead in the championship. Not a great pair of races, but Formula 2 is back again next weekend. We also had Formula 3, and the sprint race was kind of wet. I've been singing Franco Colapinto's graces for a while, and he keeps disappointing. I think he has what it takes to win, but he makes too many mistakes, lacking consistency. He went off into the gravel, and oh yeah, Villagomez crashed, spun round by Oliver Gray. Paul Aron won after taking the lead on lap 18 from Pepi Marti, a first win for the Estonian Prima driver. The feature race was a lot drier, but there were quite a few mistakes and instances of contact, leading to broken wings and punctures. Gabriel Bortoleto finished second, keeping up his devastating form in feature races in 2023, but it was Zach O'Sullivan who took his third win of the year. Bortoleto has a huge 36-point lead, and whilst the next 6 drivers are very close to each other in the standings, they are running out of time to hunt down the Brazilian. We will finish off the single-seaters with the Formula Regional European. Of course, all the weekend's races were overshadowed by the death of Danilo Van Toff, but none more than here. Rafael Camaro led from pole and had to fight off a few drivers, including a Martinius Stenhorn, who is exceeding all expectations in my opinion. There were a lot less safety cars than you normally get in a Freck race, but there was one for Enzo Scionti after he was spun into the gravel. Then, 4 minutes from time, after Sami Megatunov was taken out at Le Com. Camaro held on for the win and Prema had a lot of cars near the top. So, on to race 2. I think questions about whether or not this race should have gone ahead need to be answered, and I don't think it should have. It was very wet, and Formula Regional European has a lot of cars, 34 in fact, and they are all junior drivers. Some very talented, but all inexperienced. It was always too dangerous, but often this goes unnoticed until it's too late, and it's much easier to point out in hindsight. The spray was incredible, so many cars kicking up water, but not at all parts of the track. Some of it was definitely drier. The weather got worse as the race went on. There was a safety car after Partashev made contact at the bus stop and his race was over. The safety car stayed out for a long while and the rain kept coming. When it did finally restart for a 2-lap sprint, Tim Tramitz spun on the curbs at the top of Eau Rouge, and then disaster as the pack that had been bunched up by the safety car went through a wall of spray with a damaged car on the track. A red flag was brought out in the aftermath. Andrea Kimi Antonelli won, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so Rallycross from Sweden. You would have to be insane or incredibly brave to bet against Kristoffersson. Or maybe you just don't watch Rallycross. Well, he dominated at a very muddy Sweden, and it wasn't interesting to watch. Gerlane Chiteric got his Lancia into the final for the first time in 2023, which was nice to see. Kristoffersson has maximum points. Don't watch this series. European Rallycross is actually more interesting right now. It has a good cast of drivers, with Backerud and Larson popping in and out, joining the likes of Baumanis and Ide. But even with all that talent in the field, it was teenage Irish sensation Patrick O'Donovan who took the win in the best final of the weekend. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I did not watch the entire 24 hours of Spa. I checked in for bits and bobs, and I watched the highlights, but to be fair, I did watch another 24-hour race just a couple of weeks ago. Maybe this should be later in the year. This race hosted both the Intercontinental GT Championship and the GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup, or Goethe Krieg as I like to call it. BMW are by far the most successful winners of the 24 hours of Spa, and 2023 saw them take their 25th win. The next highest is Porsche with 8. The race looked entertaining enough, with Philip Eng taking his third Spa 24-hour win alongside Nick Yelloy and Marco Wittmann. I'd enjoy these GT series a lot more if there were less of them, and they were more organised. Why are two race series separate of each other, sharing drivers and races? Why is it called GT World Europe? What sense does that make? There are far too many GT series around these days, and it'd be nice if they put together some kind of hierarchy. And also briefly on the Le Mans Classic, a fantastic weekend of racing and plenty of wonderful cars from the 1920s to the modern era. I really enjoyed it all, and it's all free to watch on YouTube. So, finally to NASCAR. I don't normally watch it, but first, this was a street race, which is a strange concept for a NASCAR race, and it was in Chicago, the Windy City, because people have really bad gas from all the pizza. Shane Van Gisbergen was a guest star in the series this week, and all eyes were on how he'd cope on his NASCAR debut. Well, he only went and bloody won it, didn't he? I told you he was the best in the world. Max, Lewis, no, Shane is the man. I think it helped that he probably has the most experience on street circuits and in damp conditions. This was a very entertaining race, unpredictable, a lot of crashes, the weather helped, and the fact it's just unusual to see NASCARs on street circuits. They need this. This might shock all of you, but oval racing is kind of boring. IndyCar has it right. Have a few ovals, but not too many. NASCAR used to have like 30 plus a year. In the last few years, they've added dirt races, rovals, and now a street race. SVG became the first NASCAR driver to win on debut for 60 years, and it's the very first street race. What a way to write your name in the history books. I think I'm right in saying that Shane has now qualified for the playoffs. Whether or not he can compete in them due to other commitments, we'll have to see. The commentators might have to learn how to say his name.
You see Christopher Bell in the 20. He'll slide off the corner for a while, and that will open the line for Shane Van Gisbergen. Right?
60 years since a driver has won in their series debut. Well, through turn 11, Shane Van Gisbergen has been perfect.
So that was all the action from the past weekend. I have to say, for the first time ever, the NASCAR takes my race of the weekend. More street circuits please, and more Shane Van Gisbergen. Next weekend we have more Formula 1, 2 and 3, as well as F1 Academy DTM, World Endurance, Stock Car Brazil, Extreme E, Supercars, IMSA and NASCAR, but it's back on the oval, so I probably won't watch it. Formula Regional European is also back in action, but in all honesty, they should cancel the event this weekend. Give the series time to breathe. Make sure you subscribe, leave your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.